Right, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about this tweet that Jason Kenney put out yesterday saying, hope is on the horizon. Quote, optimism is high among Alberta's medium to large businesses, as many companies believe they will be able to fully recover from the pandemic within 6 months, shows a Scotiabank survey released Monday. Now, this could be some good news, but I mean, I do think that there needs to be some obvious pushback here. The first, and I think most obvious one being, what about small businesses, right? That's very funny, conveniently ignores small businesses. Um, and number two, I think the other problem is very obvious in that my guess is that these businesses are assuming that there won't be any more lockdowns. And I think three, I don't think people realize just um, how how we are kind of just hanging by a thread. Um, like I brought up a lot before, is that people don't seem to a lot of people don't seem to realize that if the government wasn't able to run more, massive deficits. I mean, the federal government, I think, put up roughly the same amount of debt last year as they did in the entire, 2019 through 1867, right? So these businesses seem to think, oh yeah, things will be all right, but they don't seem to want to point out that the only reason that's the case is because the government I mean the Bank of Canada, I think we're at like $1 billion a day and counting, right? I think that number's even going up. So people don't seem to realize, yeah, things are going to be okay. I mean, I don't think they're going to be. I think it all depends on what their definition of okay is, right? And I think another thing to point out here too is that these large businesses, they think they know they're going to be okay. Number one, because the government has been helping them, and number two, the government will continue to help them, and number three, a lot of their competition has been drove out of business. So that's something that I think also needs to be pointed out that I don't think is being pointed out here. So um, the whole point of this, I think, is that this is incredibly misleading, and for the simple reason being that does anyone actually believe that we're out of the woods or we're going to be out of the woods soon? Like, I don't think most people believe that. I think the people that support lockdowns want lockdowns to never end. And I'm literally not being hyperbolic when I say that, is that if it was up to them, we would never reopen. Um, or at least not until everything collapsed and they had to face some reality. Um, and for the people that do, they're the ones that are usually smart enough to recognize the amount of damage that has been done by lockdowns. So again, like I think it's very obvious here that the small businesses have been killed. And not to mention too, there's been tons of businesses go out of business. Like just within walking distance of my house, there's been two businesses gone out of business. There's been um, two or three restaurants that I've been to that are, go to sometimes that have been put out. Um, actually three now that I think of it. Um, so again, like Jason Kenney's making it appear like things are going to be all hunky dory, but they're not going to be. Like I hate to break it to people, but there's no data that I'm seeing. Now, the only data that I think would point towards that is the amount of government free money, right? The amount of government free money that's been pumped into the economy in both Canada and the States, that is the one thing that is a little, somewhat encouraging when it comes to the economy. The problem is very obvious, and that can't last forever, right? And the other thing I would point out too is that if things are going to be all fine and hunky dory, then why do we need so much government stimulus, right? If the lockdowns didn't cause that much damage to the economy, which Jason Kenney is clearly implying here, then why do we need record deficits? And not only like record, like they're dwarfing like the next highest. Like the projected federal debt was supposed to be like 30 billion, like 20 or 30 billion, and it was like 400. Like we more than 10x the expected debt. Same goes for the provinces, right? So people don't seem to realize that, yeah, things, I don't think things are going to be good by any means. I think we're going to come out of this and, 6, 7% unemployment is going to be normal, even though that's basically recession-like numbers, or at the very least soft recession numbers. That's going to be normal. Like what plan, aside from money printing, what plan does the government have, both federally, provincially, liberal, conservative, NDP, I don't care who they are, like what plan do any of these people have to get us out of this mess? Aside from money printing. Like they don't have anything. They have nothing. So what makes people think that things are going to be perfectly fine? Like I really don't know. Now, um, all they would have to do if they wanted to, well, I mean, things are never going to be great because of the amount of damage that's been done. But if the government really wanted to fix things, all they would have to do is end the lockdowns, deregulate, and just get out of the way. Let the private sector fix things. The problem is that the people that are addicted and love micromanaging things are the people that usually run government. And the problem with those people is that they suck at what they do. And maybe they'll be good at it for a little bit, but eventually it gets to the point where they screw something up, and then eventually everything gets screwed up. And it's the same thing that happened with the whole lockdown situation. The government screwed up at pretty much every level they possibly could. And I've been in all of this stuff ad nauseum, so I'm not going to get into it. But again, the government screwed everything up. They underreacted to it initially, then we've been overreacting to it ever since. Right? We're taking the you know what more seriously when the death rate is comparable to the flu than when we thought it was 3 or 4%. Right? The logic, there's no logic behind that whatsoever. It's literally the opposite of logic. Right? So at the end of the day, things may be fine. For all we know, I could be wrong, and we'll come out of this with 4% unemployment, maybe 5 at the most. We'll have great GDP growth. Everything will be hunky dory. For all we know, that could be the case, and I'll be wrong. But I'm still not. I'm still mostly right in that there was no need to cause most of the damage in the first place. Right? It's like your parents beat you as a kid, and you turned out better because of that. Well, does that mean that parents should beat their kids? Well, no. And it's the same thing with this stuff, is that the government destroyed the economy for no reason and continues to do it to some degree. Does it, and if things turn out all right, does that make it okay? Well, no, of course it doesn't. Now, again, that's obviously not a perfect comparison, but it's a comparison nonetheless. So again, Jason Kenney thinks hope is on the horizon. How many people actually believe that? Like the one thing that pretty much everybody agrees on, whether you're an NDP supporter, whether you're a conservative, whether you don't like any of them, whether you support lockdowns, whether you don't, the one thing that pretty much everybody I talk to agrees with is that hope is not on the horizon. I don't know one person. I've even online, I mean, aside from Jason Kenney, but like an actual everyday person, someone that isn't a politician, that is saying, yeah, my life is actually, I do know one person, but they're an outlier, and they're not someone I actually know personally. I don't know anyone personally, and next to no one online who says, yeah, my life is better now than it was a little over a year ago. Like not one person. Right? And I know people that haven't lost their jobs that have, been perfectly fine, but there's still other things going on, right? So at the end of the day here, again, this is just more garbage from Jason Kenney here. Like, I don't know what this guy's play is. I really don't know what his play is, because it seems to be he wants to try and play the middle, like he wants to pretend he's the most reasonable guy in the room. But again, like whoever's advising him is such an idiot. It's not even funny, because Again, I've pointed this out a million times. If you are a conservative politician, there is nothing you can do to change the left's mind of you. There's nothing you can do. So why he's trying to do that is beyond me. And the other worst thing about that too is even if you do change people's minds, you're still alienating people that supported you in the first place. Like trying to blindly play the middle ground as a conservative is political suicide. Like if I was advising Jason Kenney and my goal was to make sure that he loses, assuming he's still the leader, that he loses the next election by the most amount possible, I would be advising him to do almost exactly what he's doing, right? Because he's he's doing just enough to keep a lot of his supporters interested, but he's crapping on them every chance he can get, just alienating more and more people. Like he is doing if his goal was to alienate the most amount of people possible, aside from basically saying it like and being telling people that, I don't know what else I would be doing if I was him. So apparently the UCP are coming up with this recall stuff. I hope they get a new leader before next election. I still probably wouldn't vote for him unless it's someone like Drew Barnes or someone like that. That would be the only way I would consider voting for them. But I really hope they get a new leader because they're going to get destroyed if things keep going like this. But anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about when it comes to this stuff. I could go on forever, but I'm going to leave it there. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links. Check me out on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you could do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get. But like I said, at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.